From a lonely universe where the light of stars fades against a cold and empty void, the year emerged as a defining moment for mankind. The Orion arm of the Milky Way was no longer some distant dream. It was home to bustling colonies, highly civilized areas, and a twisty maze of secrets to be uncovered. The swirling colors of stardust birthed an epoch where the branches of ancient worlds nestled within the harmony of celestial songs. Untold gossamer together twined until it became alerts that brushed sound against fading ruins of space stations abandoned through eons. Aria Nova, Captain, rising star among the stars, a title well-earned and a position most sought out, often found herself in the presence of such mysteries. Haunted by a failure of her own, a mission that had claimed precious lives, she refused to let that cloud her judgment. What kept her from drifting in an abyss of darkness and despair was a yearning for redemption that had tears the touch of her fingertips, a caress that warmed the yearning remnants of life that sparkled in her atoms. It was during one such routine patrol on the edges of an empty sector that fate spun its thread. Nova's ship, the Aurora's Vigil, drifted silently through a sector of space covered in cosmic dust and broken only by the ghostly light of distant suns. The ship's sensors registered anomalous signs emanating from an area close to a long-forgotten nebula, osmosis into empty space, a territory between the worlds where the crew spoke in hushed tones, a graveyard of lost fights and untold stories. Fragmented images and distorted audio rushed past her as she wove through the interconnected ruins that covered the dead Earth, buried behind layers of encrypted language and forgotten entries bored to dust in long-deserted logs, suggesting a secret withheld from the public eye for longer than she could imagine. In the subdued glow of the command deck, Nova examined holographic schematics and historical logs that depicted what life had been like in a time when humanity's martial capabilities peaked. Stories of a shadowy fleet, lying dormant in the farthest reaches of space, were shared like ghost stories among veterans and murmurs in the corridors of official bureaucracies. These tales told of a hidden fleet, the alleged sleeper Warfleet, constructed in the shadow of an age defined by unchecked aspirations coupled with primal survival instincts. These warships, they said, were far beyond any known technology and had simply been put into a deep state of stasis, waiting for when needed to wield their power once more. Outside, the cosmos splayed like a canvas of wonder and peril. Nebulae swarmed in swirling shades of indigo and violet, their mouths stitched with iridescent stitches, horrible secrets stitched behind the mouths that belied their beauty. Wreathed in this beauty, scraps of forgotten stations circled in silent watch, each a monument that the past could never really die. The sight of curled metal and splintered glass spoke of conflicts waged for the sake of advancement and defense, now mere echoes in the abyss. Back on the Aurora's Vigil, Captain Nova squinted at the screen as she followed the trail of the cryptic transmissions. And the further she got into the files, the more sure she was. Something vast had been squandered, kept under lock and key, behind years of bureaucracy. Years of navigating the treacherous corridors of interstellar conflict had given her an intuition, and it told her that echoes from the past, they were no mere legend. They were a challenge, one that beckoned her to reveal secrets that could alter the future of humanity. Yet in that instant, space was not rent by the sound of an explosion or a battle cry, but by the words of a captain poised at the edge of destiny. Their echoes coursed through the Excel sheet of the past, whispering, "Here I am, a leader dares to wear." And thus, beneath an infinite canopy of stars, the prologue of a story long shrouded in secrecy and time reached its conclusion. The soft hum of the Aurora's Vigil's engines was a gentle reminder of the ship's power as Captain Aria Nova guided her starship toward the source of the strange signals. Sure enough, that data anomaly she had come across in the previous chapter flared gently across her command deck, its confounding patterns whispering seductively at her, begging to be solved. As Nova started a deep scan of the sector, she questioned the mythos that surrounded the tales of the sleeper Warfleet. A pin lamp glared at Allendale in the darkened corner of the ship's archive room, a stuffy chamber where dusty logs, tattered blueprints, and encrypted files piled up on top of one another, where Nova found herself stuck in a pile of digital records. She was no stranger to the job. Her career had been built upon the meticulous work of poring through relics from past missions and obscured government files. But today was different. This file, stamped with a series of indecipherable symbols and classified codes, hinted at something much bigger than the typical military secrets. Nova's fingers flitted across the holographic interface, untangling strands of data embedded in the transmission. Each segment she decrypted revealed a coherent discussion. The file detailed the secret program, launched decades before, a contingency so incredible it had been kept from the public and even most of the military command. Close-up schematics detailing advanced warships built with technology eons beyond that of the current era whipped across the screen. No, these ships weren't meant to engage in enemy action. They were constructed to be awakened only in the direst situations. Her heart raced when she discovered correspondence between high-ranking officials here discussing the fleet's dormant state. The language was cautious, almost reverent, as if the discovery of warships in the country was soaked in an aura of awe and dread. The messages hinted at a future in which these ships might be used as a last line of defense against existential threats, or, if mishandled, as the harbingers of unimaginable destruction. Nova hesitated, the gravity of the evidence sinking in around her, heavy as a shroud. This was no ordinary historical footnote. It was a template for power, storied and crudely outlined in several enclosures on the farthest reaches of an empire that had prevailed over centuries of unrest and had become vertiginous with peace. Her mind whirled with the possibilities. If such a fleet could ever be restimulated, the balance of power in the galaxy would be fatally altered. Every whispered rumor, every disqualified legend now felt different. At that point, a gentle tap resonated from the archive room door. The decoder was Lieutenant Marek, Nova's trusted second-in-command, who had helped navigate the labyrinth of classified databases. His ever-watchful eyes, filled with curiosity, finally locked with hers as he entered. "Captain, I've been listening to the auxiliary channels," he said quietly, "and I think there's more data buried in these logs that we haven't tapped into yet." They worked together, digging deeper, reconstructing bits of old military cables and technical manuals and classified memoranda, alongside which weaves its own history, where each document was a thread in the tapestry of a forgotten past, pulling them toward a revelation that unraveled the official records of the space government. The more they dug, the clearer it became that someone had intentionally veiled crucial details. It was clear that the sleeper Warfleet was not a myth, but a carefully designed contingency, waiting to be reawoken under a banner of crisis. Hours passed, and Nova felt those usual clashing feelings of excitement and apprehension. After all, she was the one responsible. Each unbroken line and each schematic revealed was confirmation that her next steps would not only determine her fate, but that of all humankind. And in those silent twirls of luminescence and information, the repressed truths started shouting through the still veins of data streams, a truth that would soon launch her into a war not just for her life, but for the soul of the galaxy. It was now obvious to be seen, evidence of the lie against her. So much peril lay in wait on the road ahead. No one in this play was drinking cocktails, but every scrap of new information only fanned the flames of her resolve. Captain Arya Nova knew that in this archive of forgotten histories, she had grasped the key to a mystery that could lock the future of humanity or open the door to an abyss of war. Alone in the quiet solitude of her private quarters, Captain Arya Nova was lulled by the soft humming of the Aurora's Vigil's engines, distant enough from the rage within to be near silent. The stars outside swirled in endless silence, while shadows leapt against the buffed walls. As she spent the moment to think back, her ghosts returned, and each held another set of weight to her soul. That fateful mission, one that had turned to tragedy, was as vivid in her memory as the constellations etched around her window. Nova remembered the horrifying specifics, the orders that had lured her into a snare, the frantic communications from her crew, the tortured screams that had haunted her in her sleep. She had been young at the time, youthful and determined, but just as naive about the actual cost of command. She knew she had made a choice then, one that had a price she could never have foreseen, one that now echoed of loss like the thudding of her heart. It brought her back to the faces of the lost, a crew of brave hearts who had entrusted her with their fate. And in each name, each smile, There was a wordless echo of reproach, a reminder of the promise she made to never let something like that color her future. The peace of her quarters was periodically broken, a soft blink made by the holovid display, the eyeless thing, as it cycled through the names of the dead as if they were but memories flickering in an infinite loop. It was a private gallery of regret, a shrine to a history that refused to die. But in the sadness was also will, a desire to atone. Nova's quest into the dark depths of hidden archives and forgotten military secrets wasn't simply a search for the truth. It was a personal pilgrimage toward redemption. Unraveling the mysteries of the sleeper Warfleet was fraught with danger and moral complexity, she knew. But it was a road she felt she had to walk. In fact, piecing together her own past, sitting across the table from her failures, was itself a path toward reclaiming some of the dignity that had been stolen from her. When the night finally turned deep, Nova extracted an old datapad from a pocket unceremoniously, a breadcrumb of a life she no longer lived, containing unrefined logs and data from her early service days. The scrawled notes in her younger hand, filled with idealism and untried resolve, were a reminder and a challenge. As she read those words, she recognized the deep contrast between the person she was then and the person she'd grown into. She bore the burden of guilt, but it was also a flame to her purpose to ensure that that horrible past was not repeating. Her crew's faces flashed through her mind, each a living testament to her leadership and the heavy weight of responsibility she had to shoulder. Even at the darkest point in the project, they had believed in her. Their quiet support now became her rock, a vow that no one else would ever die due to her orders. The loss that haunted her to the grave, and every plan she made, every case she took on in the name of justice, was a reminder of the price paid in blood that she was determined to honor. In that moment, locked away and far away from the noise of the universe, Captain Nova swore to herself. Her future was not going to be defined by nostalgia, rather by nostalgia willing to be the anchor and guide conquering perils, guiding her into the intoxicating waters ahead. Taking a deep, grounding breath, she viewed what had been guilt not as chains that would hold her back, but as the reminder of her duty to protect, to learn, and to lead with the knowledge gained through both success and failure. And so in the silence of the vessel and the empty night, her suffering turned into a vow. Each future step would be with the intent to honor the dead, and the road to atonement, no matter how arduous and filled with dangers, must be walked. It was here, in the chill corridors of the Aurora's vigil, where Captain Arya Nova's resolve had crystallized, here where she had dared step into a world where every encrypted file and forgotten memo masked tantalizing evidence. The hunt for the truth was no academic exercise. It was a deadly pilgrimage into the ego of lies buried under a secret agenda and a solid alliance, a web of treachery that would unravel the fragile net of power across the cosmos. Emerging from the solitude of her quarters, Nova dove into the ship's secure data vault. The soft drone of servers and low, rhythmic keystrokes created an underground symphony, scoring her concentrated resolve. Each line of code she uncovered revealed a hidden thread of the tapestry. The records, long buried under bureaucratic layers of obfuscation, flickered to life on the holographic display. Confidential memos, fragmented battle reports, and enigmatical blueprints of advanced warships whispered signs of a scheme much grander than she had ever imagined. Her initial breakthrough was a forgotten communication log, a digital artifact from a time when trust was rare and every word bore risk and reward. The log described a secret meeting of senior military leaders, huddled in low voices over a contingency so elaborate it was outside common knowledge. It referenced Project Lazarus, a term that sent a chill coursing through Nova as she realized it was deeply connected to the sleeper Warfleet. The implications were staggering. If the fleet were ever called into action, its power could tilt the balance of war, leaving billions at the mercy of an invisible fist. Intent on digging deeper, Nova called in Lieutenant Marek, whose talent for data forensics had proven crucial. In the seclusion of a soundproof conference room on the starship, the two moved between them. Conversation, a low rumble contrasted with the space-docking buzz of digitized information. Marek's deft fingers danced over layers of complex encryption, stripping it off one layer at a time. "There's a pattern there," he said, eyes glued to the snapping data streams. I mean, these files are purposely fragmented, like they're meant to be found in parts by someone who knows exactly where to look. I also think the collaboration paid off because as these disparate pieces fell into place, they formed a story that made sense. The few protected messages hinted at peremptory meetings taking place on far-flung outposts, coded transceivers shared between trusted allies, and a secret network that had kept the Warfleet's secrets for decades. For every story that emerged from the rubble, the first clans having innovated with their ancient ingenuity, bequeathing their discoveries to the re-emerging tribes of man. The proper truth became unequivocal. The sleeper Warfleet was no remnant of an age past, but a painstakingly constructed deterrent, an insurance policy that they knew would have to be unleashed in the event that humanity disintegrated into irreparable war. But with each new revelation came some undeniable tension. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that someone, or something, was purposefully leading them deeper in their search. There were gaps in the logs. Vital details had been scrubbed clean, leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Nova's gut told her that there was an invisible hand wending its way through events, from the darkness behind the curtain, ensuring that the whole story was hidden from view unless she was prepared to walk the road less traveled, the road forbidden. The memories of wrongdoing lingered, and the burden of duty weighed heavy on Nova. This was not just an inquiry into an obscure military project. It was an exploration of the depths of betrayal and ambition. Each decrypted message, each unveiled correspondence, was a puzzle piece that, when put together, would shake the very fabric of the space government she had vowed to safeguard. And so, as the hours bled into the quiet hum of the ship's night cycle, Captain Nova vowed to follow the breadcrumbs to wherever they could lead. Armed with this evidence, her resolve was renewed, to not only reveal hidden truths to the world, but also to take on the ideological enemies embedded within the upper ranks of power. Before Vader reached her, an otherness will rise to consume the world he knows as darkness poured forth from the scheming scenes of the galaxy. But for now, dark, dull iron armor sat hesitantly on steel-arched muscles, revealed heads peering out and over a winged table. And so it was that in the hidden heart of the Aurora's vigil, behind luminescent cascades of code and ghostly echoes of history, a war for the truth gathered pace. The dark guarantee that the invisible puppeteers choreographing this vast conspiracy would soon enough have nowhere to hide. Captain Nova strode into the strategy room of the Aurora's vigil, where the gentle hum of the ship's engines served as a constant heartbeat in the background, paired with the soft flickering of holographic displays and the clutter of data pads. But Nova also understood that uncovering the secrets of the sleeper Warfleet would need more than her individual determination. It would take a coalition of trained and bold individuals prepared to stand against the hidden hand pulling the strings behind the scenes. It was all Nova could do to call the meeting, each face of the crew she trusted most encircling her with a mix of hesitant determination and unshaken history. Lieutenant Marek, always the taciturn protector of electronic confidences, slid into the chair next to hers where his eyes shone with something between curiosity and determination. Opposite him was Ensign Raya, the navigation prodigy whose otherworldly capacity to plot stars and constellations with their ship had rescued them on more than one occasion, and who was now paying intense attention. And there was also Dr. Elias Verne, a former tactical analyst turned unconventional strategist, whose unconventional ideas often transcended the limitations of standard protocol. You were all chosen, not only for your ability, but for your loyalty, Nova said, her voice commanding and earnest at the same time. We're on the brink of discovering a secret that could rock the very underpinnings of human civilization. In order for that to happen, we need to work together, trusting one another, even when the truth may take us to our darkest passageways. A moment of silence blanketed the room as her meaning hit home. Marek leaned forward, scrolling on his digital pad. Captain, I have been cross-referencing the decrypted logs against orbital scans of several remote outposts, he said in a low voice. There is consistent activity in a region near the Outer Rim, a location for which official records abandoned long ago. I think that's where we're going to find our next clue. Nova's eyes shone with equal parts hope and trepidation. That's precisely the kind of insight we need. Ensign Raya, Plot a course for that sector. I want us to arrive before any of Draeger's agents detect our movement." Raya's fingers flew over her console, entering coordinates with the precision of long practice. "Course locked, Captain. We'll be in position in less than an hour," she said, her voice steady against the weight of the moment. Dr. Verne cleared his throat, speaking thoughtfully. "Although our aim is obvious, we also need to think about the consequences of such a path of cooperation. The forces we're about to face aren't simply the machines of the future. They're the avatars of an old order, one that has painstakingly kept its secrets. The collective strength is in our diversity of abilities, not in sheer numbers. You each bring something irreplaceable to this mission." Nova laid out the plan, and the room re-energized with renewed focus. Not only were they out to scoop up more intelligence, but also to ambush a clandestine meet described in the new decrypted messages. This was not an everyday mission, but a reconnaissance into the depths of a web of deception harbored by unseen hands. In subdued whispers, the crew shared intimate tales, accounts of close calls, experiences of deep loss, and times when hope had shone bravely amidst the vast shadows of the cosmos. These common memories created a bond that bridged rank or duty. And Nova, as always, was right. It was in the interweavement of individual stories where the power to meet the encounter with grief and loss lay. As Nova concluded the meeting, her eyes moved over the faces in the room, some lit by strategic displays and others in thoughtful silence. "We are not prerogative nor scattered fragments of isolated duty," she said, her voice carrying a mix of warmth and determination. "We are allies in the shadows, bound by a cause greater than any one of us. Together, we will reveal to the world the nature of the sleeper Warfleet, and through that revelation, reclaim our destiny." With that, the crew scattered, everyone with a reason to be in a specific place. The vigil of Aurora streaked across the edges of black paper and burned into the corners of trees, spacecraft, and planets, moving towards the place where the silenced fables of deceit dripped on unmarked roads. Among the cascade of electronic signals and murmured confessions, allies had been forged, and thus began a new chapter in their common odyssey, one where the fire of solidarity would illuminate their path through the impending night. The Aurora's vigil translated out of hyperspace into an area where swirling light and dark played a cosmic game of Twister. Before the crew hung a vast nebula, a swirling, iridescent cloud of interstellar gas and dust hiding more than just heavenly beauty. The nebula's vibrant colors, deep indigos, throbbing magentas, ephemeral greens, promised mysteries well older than the starship, secrets spoken over eons and recorded in a lexicon of luminosity. Captain Nova was standing at the command deck, her eyes resting on the mysterious outline of the nebula. Before her was the holographic display, and it lit up a map of a cosmic web woven together by eddies of powerful gravity and surges of energy, each point representing a data capture, and each capture standing in for a slice of reality. "This is it," she said, her tone somewhere between awe and steely resolve. "Within this tempestuous veil stand the dormant legion of our buried past." The ship's path was plotted precisely, and the Aurora's vigil wove through narrow corridors where the nebula's dense clouds formed maze-like passages. Behind them, the rest of the crew stood tense, aware that there was something great in the cosmic fog. The deft navigation of Ensign Raya turned the ship's voyage into a cautious dance with the ever-unpredictable forces of nature, with each movement dragging against the invisible gravity of the celestial bodies floating unmindfully across their range of travel. The atmosphere was different inside the nebula. The ship's sensors, long attuned to the cold, empty voids of space, now transmitted a tapestry of strange readings. Darkness was punctuated by faint signatures of heat and energy, indicating the presence of structures that defied the nebula's natural order. Nova paced restlessly as the crew started picking up pieces of an encrypted signal, an echo of a long-lost age, faintly pulsating beneath the background radiation of the cosmos. Lieutenant Marek, stationed at his console, hammered away trying to decode the irregular sequences. "Captain, I'm filtering a series of energy spikes indicating an artificial construct," he said, his eyes glued to the cascading streams of data. They're too periodic for them to be natural. We're probably close to something man-made. As it drifted further into the heart of the nebula, the starship unveiled its secret. An immense structure materialized against the backdrop of swirling cosmic mists, a colossal warship, its silhouette half-veiled by the nebula's colorful tendrils. No modern craft would rival the ship, a structure so archaic and futuristic at once. It spanned a time so far back that long ago, humanity's ambitions had no top, no end. Delicate, jagged lines and layers of knotted rescue armor now bide their time, sitting still and covered with a fine layer of cosmic dust as they hum with unfaltering, ancient strength. Captain Nova had drawn a sharp breath behind her mask, realizing the ironclad was not only familiar from the plans read from the files in the secret archives, it was a flagship for the sleeper Warfleet, now decanted into the open again. The ancient warship's hull, marred by battles of a time long past, spoke of valor and despair. Every rivet, every contoured panel told of a time when humanity had prepared for a war so dire it had constructed an armada in expectation of an enemy not yet seen. The disclosure was greeted with an ominous quieting across the span. Nova's mind spun with scenarios. Was this some hidden fleet or relic of strategic brilliance or a failure of memory intended to defend from a danger no longer present? The crew's eyes shone with the same sense of wonder and dread that the captain felt. And even while the Aurora's vigil kept a proper distance of respect, the warship gave the strong perception of being a force that must be reckoned with. From deep in the faint light of the nebula's nucleus, Nova started a tentative scan. The vessel's systems, though quiescent, pulsed weakly with residual energy. It sounded like the warship, frozen in stasis for centuries, was just biding its time, waiting for the right moment or the right hand to stir its dormant power. For instead, a fuel that encrypted signals and phantoms of commands long forgotten were merely lining the readouts in the sensors. The captain eventually learned that this was not merely a scrap. It was a trove of power, a Pandora's box of hope and destruction. "You know," Captain Nova said, brushing hair from her face, as the nebula glimmered behind the bridge screens, familiar and beautiful, a tang of mystery about it. It was too close. But the nebula of secrets had nothing else to give. It showed its insides and used the same cryptics as the universe would. And yet, the truth that lay hidden in the imperceptible halls of the sleeper Warfleet was calling. The way to a new future, or a gamble on the past repeating itself. As the spectral light of the nebula painted the bridge golden, Nova's resolve crystallized. Then she was guided out from behind the desk, and the lights piled on her, and everyone leaned in, waiting for her announcement. Thus, in the legacy of ancient technology coiled around them, intertwining with the vibrant, mysterious glow of the nebula, the next chapter of their journey began. A journey in which every secret unearthed would give rise to unanswered questions, and every bold step taken would resonate with the echoes of the eternal clash between legacy and the fate destiny demanded. The anticipation on the Aurora's vigil hung thick in the air around the starship as it hovered near the dormant silhouette of the ancient warship. Tension crackled in each corridor, a prelude to the inevitable conflict of ideologies. That day, Captain Nova felt her chest pounding as if her body were sounding the call of war, but she knew the next battle they would fight would be as much against themselves as against another force. Behind him stood the silent command center, a holographic star map illuminated with every piece of scattered data, secret rendezvous points, and the desperate array of allegiances that had led to this covert mission. The team huddled, features a mix of determination and apprehension. Eyes knew the weight of all that was to come. Now it was time to face the one behind the schemes, Admiral Valen Drager. The standoff was not anticipated. A secure blast of transmission exploded across the bridge, the screen coming to life with the somber face of Admiral Drager. His gaze, sharp and calculating, met Nova's with an ice-cold, unapologetic confidence. His voice, modulated and resonant, pierced the silence. "Captain Nova, you have interjected yourself into matters that are beyond your ken. You have uncovered truths that were meant to stay buried." Nova's response was measured but furious. "Admiral Drager, truth does not stay hidden in darkness for long. However, if you actually think we will be better off by these actions, If you think the future of this world is going to be built on the foundation of not knowing, you sit on the other side of knowledge with regards to me, and I do hope that you are meeting yourself in the mirror with your actions in the future. Your Warfleet, your concealed contingency. It is not the salvation of humanity, but its damnation. There was a pause, filled with only the faintest hum of ship systems and the echoes of cosmic winds. If Draeger's response was belated, it was laced with cold pragmatism. You talk of freedom, but you hold fast to a past stained with error. My vision is a future of order over chaos, secured not by hope, but by organized strength. Our people deserve stability, even if at the cost of the wild unpredictability of democracy. The exchange of words was never won without its mischievous nature heightened the deeper they went into the dialogue. Nova's eyes grew steely with resolve. Stability achieved through fear is a cage around the soul, Admiral. You have shed human blood and hope upon the altar of your ambition. Every command hidden, every coded order in your precious archives has brought us here, to this moment of inevitable reckoning. Our history may be darkened, but it also contains deep lessons. We cannot erase our failures, nor can we allow them to dictate a future without mercy. On the bridge, the crew's focus never faltered. Lieutenant Marek cut in gently, his voice calm. Captain, these patterns in his transmissions, they are not random. There's a strategy, a philosophical undergirding to everything he's done. We're watching a man who really believes himself to be the architect of a new order. Draeger's expression twisted into something that might have been an imitation of remorse, or perhaps a strategic display of weakness. I have witnessed the fragility of human nature, the chaos that surfaces when ideals run wild. The world is a war zone, Captain. I have just picked the road that I feel will make our survival safe. His is an authoritative voice, but with a hint of sorrow, a man burdened by decisions he felt had been necessary sacrifices. Nova leaned forward, antagonistic yet caring. And what of that sacrifice of our humanity? You would snuff out the flame that makes us who we are. The Warfleet was never supposed to be a tyrant's weapon. It was a last resort, a deterrent against an enemy that had yet to be born. The very same giant that had chained you under its heel for centuries. But now you carry ancient blood in your veins and pacts forged in fires long gone, and you stand before it, after mere centuries, waking it to bend the rest of a galaxy to your will. A profound and deep silence descended as the opposing confounding forces took one another's measure in a silent battle of wills. The sensors on the starship were humming in the background, recording every micro-expression, every nuance in their exchange. And in that moment that seemed to hang in the air like the blade of a guillotine, the actual fight took place not in lasers or missiles, but in syntax and beliefs and the tired souls of people who wanted more. And as the standoff seemed to reach its apex, Nova's last words were filled with defiance and hope. I do not fight for the values of a bygone era, but for a world where every human life has value and every voice is heard. Admiral, the decision is simple. Keep treading this avenue of frozen domination, or make way for the light of truth to lead us all toward a more humane fate. Draeger's face appeared on the screen. A sympathetic look crossed his face. The transmission cut off just as it began, a question lingering in the charged atmosphere of the Aurora's vigil. In that moment, the crew sensed the weight of history in the air, and the possibility of a future stretching out before them not marked by dominion and power, but by a brave affirmation of liberation. The ideological clash had only just begun, and the battle lines were drawn, not in the empty expanse of space, but rather in the hearts and minds of those who wished to dream of a new tomorrow. As the first light of a distant star seeped through the reaches of space, the Aurora's vigil pulled from the debris of war into uneasy calm. Forever had the clash between them shaped the history of the cosmos, but now it was time for the galaxy to hold its breath before taking the steps towards a new dawn. Aria Nova Captain regarded the ancient warship from the bridge, locked away in the bow of a great ship, once the heart of all secret and undisclosed power, now a dangerous yo-yo between an era gone by and an uncertain future. The encounter with Admiral Draeger had been both an intense debate of philosophies and a maneuverer's contest of wills. At the end of that confrontation, the ideological fractures had sliced the darkness to shreds, exposing the Admiral's ambitions. The standoff, a one-act opera of digital clicks and frantic text, had finally concluded with Draeger's speechless surrender, a bargain that enabled Nova and her adoring crew to take the reins of the sleeper Warfleet. As Nova caught the mining giants stirring to life in the embrace of the nebula, she sensed the weight of the charge laid at her feet. The Warfleet, a dormant guardian, hummed with an energy that beckoned dormant potentials. It was no longer an instrument of tyrants or a relic of a tragic age. It was a beacon of hope, a device that could, under the right guidance, protect rather than oppress. On the command deck, the crew functioned with reserved conviction. Lieutenant Marek's fingers flew over holographic controls to recalibrate systems, a task to reunite the ancient vessels with the fold of the modern fleet. Ensign Raya charted a path to a nearby space station, a haven known for its neutrality, a place to reset alliances and craft plans for a reinvigorated future. Dr. Elias Verne provided perspectives on the technical intricacies of the old systems to make sure the warships could be integrated without losing their historical essence. In this flurry of activity, Captain Nova spoke to her crewmates with a voice that evoked both gravitas and optimism. "Today, we take back not just a fleet but our shared destiny," she said, her voice rich with pride and an unspoken hope. "We pay tribute to our past by learning from it, and strengthen our future by choosing compassion over control. Each individual on these boats embodies our refusing goodness, and we will usher in a new era, an era of unity, accountability, and the endless pursuit of justice." And so the transformation began in the days that followed. Those warships, once shelved, were lovingly restored, not to be instruments of domination, but as guardians of peace and liberty. Nova embarked on a journey of negotiation, confronting the interstellar councils with the truth of the hidden contingency and the need for transparent oversight as it integrated into galactic defense. Although met initially with skepticism, the revelation slowly ignited a cautious optimism in those who had long feared the pall of authoritarian control. The balance of power was shifting slowly, but surely. The choice to disarm the secrets of the sleeper Warfleet and to repurpose its might for the greater good ignited debates in governmental halls and whispered conversations in distant colonies. For many, it was a watershed moment, a chance to break down old power structures and reconstruct a society that valued dialogue over diktat, inclusivity over exclusion. Despite the many changes, Nova sometimes was at peace in the solitude of the moment, standing at the viewport while a new dawn bathed the starship in soft light. She thought about all the steps that had brought her to this moment in time, from the grief of her former missteps to the stake of a potential future de Dust Fagoy. The lives lost and the wounds suffered by her crew were painful reminders of the price of progress. But in that delicate light of dawn, there was also a hard belief that humanity is capable of rising above its bent impulses. With the Aurora's vigil moving forward into unexplored parts of the galaxy, bearing the legacy of both despair and hope, the promise of a new age glimmered bright. No longer a barren, hidden monument to the past. Now each ship was filled with people living together in a community to become an example of resilience united against division. Then and there, under the silent gaze of stars and cradled by the nebula of old memories and new hopes of tomorrow, the adventure of Captain Nova came to its destined climactic finish. The fray was done, the principles were writ, and the verdict was now engraven into historical record, a record that from this point would be punctuated not with the lexicon of fear, but sang with the everlasting aspiration to get better together. The future remained in question, the path forward fraught with challenges, but also full of promise. Yet, for the first time in ages, the galaxy gazed upon the horizon with a renewed sense of purpose, and a new dawn guided the way ahead.